Our 5 favorite manual flashes. Why am I so loud when I introduce each new video? Because I want to wake you all up. Wake up! Time for the next video. Okay. Now, I could talk about these flashes forever, and that's why I've created a little bullet point list of pros and cons with each one. I'm going to go through them. That way, I don't sit here and get super verbose and just talk about gear, because I do like talking about gear. Now, all these flashes, they're like my babies. I love them all. Actually, you know what? They're not. I don't love them all. Some of them are really, really annoying, and they all have their little quirks and so forth, but these are kind of the best that we got, and I'm going to talk about each of them, and I'll let you guys make your decision on which one you want, okay? So, I even have one of my little redheaded stepchildren hidden away in here. Not like an actual stepchild, like a redheaded stepchild of flashes hidden away in here. We'll bring him out later on. Okay, starting from the top, my favorite. And really, I don't have much bad to say about this guy, except maybe one thing, which I'll get to. But this is the LumiPro LP180. It's roughly around 200 bucks, depending on if you get it on sale or not. And let's talk about the pros. Number one is the excellent build quality. I mean, of all of these manual flashes, this probably has the best build quality. It actually feels like something that was not constructed in a place where people are making like 25 cents an hour. It feels like it was legitly made, and it feels, well, and it's also in the price because it's 200 bucks as opposed to all the other ones. But it has excellent build quality. Number two, it has a very simple and easy to use interface. It's a fantastic interface. It's all digital. It keeps things simple. I have a plus button to take my power up. I have a button to adjust my zoom. I have a test button. That's it. It makes it so simple. It's just a manual flash, and it doesn't try to be anything more or anything less. Number three, I've got a freaking quarter 20 built right into the side of this thing, a quarter 20 screw thing. Quarter 20 is like the standard size of screws that are on, like, say, stands or tripod plates and so forth. So I can mount this guy extremely easily, just straight out of the box. And most of the other flashes don't have that, or you would need to put on this little shoe to get it to mount on the bottom. But with this guy, I can do it anywhere I want without this little shoe, and I'm totally good. And it's metal too, so it's not really gonna break or anything. It's very secure. Okay, number four, fantastic wireless range. What do I mean by that? I mean that when you attach a PocketWizard to this device, it has a really great wireless range. PocketWizards can have issues with certain types of flashes because basically with distance and the radio transmission, it doesn't get a good signal to the flash. With this unit, we got a good signal. We were testing several hundred feet away, and we still got a great consistent signal to this unit, which is a really important thing in a manual flash because there's not really any other way to trigger at least this system. Some of these have their own radio systems, which we'll talk about. This guy doesn't, so you need a PocketWizard, needs something to be able to trigger it. And it's very compatible, works very well. Okay, and it also has 2 different sync ports, by the way. So I have a little PC sync right here, and I also have this standard, this little microphone or microphone sync jack. And I have external power and USB for updates and so forth. It's an awesome little flash. It runs on AA's too. Has good recycle time, that's point number 5. We have an external power input, which I mentioned, and it also has a metal hot shoe. Now, generally most newer flashes should have metal hot shoes, but some of the older ones, they have plastic hot shoes and they break quite easily, which is pretty dang annoying because then they are difficult to mount. But if it did ever break, you still have your quarter 20 too. Cons. Okay, this guy is more expensive. That's really the major con. My son, you are just too expensive of a manual flash. It's 200 bucks. But for 200 bucks, you're still half price compared to, say, a Mitros Plus, a full feature flash. And considering that overall it has the best just reliability, quality, ease of use, and so forth, it is number 1 on my manual flash list. The only other con that I had was that it required a third-party radio system. So there is no, LumiPro doesn't have their own like radio triggering system that you can get for this. You do need to get like PocketWizards or radio poppers or something to be able to trigger this flash. All right. Okay, let's go on to our Nikon. Now here, what is this guy? This is the SB80. Basically what I've listed here is number 2 is an SB24, SB28, SB80, just any old Nikon flash that has a PC sync port. This guy has a PC sync port right here. Okay, so these are great manual flashes, and they have stood up well, incredibly well over time. Again, Nikon makes fantastic components, fantastic equipment, and they really last for a long time. So what are the pros of this guy? They have really good build quality. They're reliable. It has a simple interface, at least a relatively simple interface. Still not as simple and intuitive as the LumiPro, but it's easy to use. It's just a standard manual flash. Pretty simple, digital interface in the back. They have fantastic wireless range. Just like the LumiPro, they don't have any issues with PocketWizard systems and receiving that radio transmission from long distances. You get consistent fires each time. It also has a good recycle time, okay? But the cons are, these are relatively expensive, depending on which unit you get. And I'm gonna tell you who you can thank for that. David Hobby, the strobist. Actually, David Hobby's he's a photographic institution when it comes to strobe. And he's the guy that came up with the Strobist blog. But when David Hobby started talking about these as being great flashes, the prices on them actually went up quite a bit. The used market went from $50, $75 a piece up to $100, $150, $200 a piece. At that price, you're better off with a new LumiPro. But if you can still get these for a decent price, they're fantastic manual flashes. The only thing is that obviously they're discontinued, so the quantity and the availability of them is kind of running slim. And also if it breaks, you're kind of out of luck at that point. Okay, so that was con number 2, is there's no really warranty because you're buying them used. And then number 3 is it does also require a third-party radio triggering system, similar to the LumiPro. It doesn't have any type of built-in radio transmission system. And a lot of these, this one does not have it. I think this one has a metal, yeah. But a lot of them will have plastic hot shoes, which kind of gets annoying. All right, this one has a metal one though. So that would be number 2 on my list though. Let's go on to number 3. I had such crazy high hopes for the newer TT850. And it's still a really good manual flash. I'm going to tell you why it's good and why it kind of let me down in some ways. Number 1 is it's simple to use. It has a very simple interface. It's not, again, my favorite interface is still the LumiPro, but this is decent. We have really big digital numbers here, and it's worth showing you guys because it reminds me of those like kind of phones for senior citizens that have like the giant 2-inch large buttons. It's very easy to see. So if you don't have good eyesight, don't worry. You can see it just fine. Okay, so it has a simple interface. It has great third-party wireless range. Now, compared to the LumiPro and the Nikon, with PocketWizards, it didn't have quite as good a consistency at 200, 300 feet, but it still was really good and it's still totally usable, okay? We also have sync ports on here. This has, let's see, this has a mini phone jack. So you will need an adapter to get basically your microphone to be able to fit the little mini phone jack. But it does have a sync port, which is kind of my number 1 thing. All of these flashes have to have some sort of sync port, otherwise you can't trigger them wirelessly if you need to with a radio triggering system, which is all about lighting 201, lighting 301. But we want to tell you now so you know which flashes to get. Okay, let's go on. So fantastic recycle times. In fact, check this guy out. This guy has its own little battery system. While all these other flashes basically use AA's, this guy comes with a lithium-ion battery. Not to mention, it comes with a lithium-ion battery and it's $105. So that's pretty good. And they boast a full power recycle time of around 1.5 to 2 seconds. That's crazy. Considering that on any of these other flashes, we're looking at 4, 5, 6 seconds for the recycle time, even more when it comes to the case of our redheaded stepchild that's tucked away in here. But that is an incredibly quick recycle time. There's a downside to that, and I'm going to get to it in just a second. There's also a factory wireless system available. Okay, so we can have a little wireless system that we can attach to this, and it's very inexpensive. I think it's like $30, and you can get the little receiver piece and an actual controller. It's so incredibly inexpensive. So, what are the cons of the newer? Well, for $100, with all of these features, you could probably guess that the quality is not going to be quite there. And in fact, the wireless system, it's very clunky. It's almost like it's so cheap, you're not sure if you can really rely on it. And it does work okay, but when you get one in your hands, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The interface, the UI, the controls on it, it's all manual controls, and it just feels kind of clunky, and you're kind of worried that it could die at any point in time if you drop it. Okay, so the quality on these is not that great. The major issue that I have with this, let's talk about this battery. There are no AA slots for this, meaning that if this battery dies, and they say that this battery can do up to 600 shots, by the way, 600 full power shots, something like that, something ridiculous. But if it dies, you're out of luck. So you need to have extra batteries like this on hand. Bad point number 2. Their batteries are very inconsistent in terms of quality control. They're released an entire batch of these batteries that only get about 3, 4, 5 shots before they die. Or maybe you'll get a few more. But they die very quickly. And you really didn't know which batteries are which, so you just had to buy lots of batteries. So I have like 10 batteries because as I find out which ones are kind of duds, I have to throw them away. And if I'm taking these out on shoots, I can't have that happen on a shoot. That makes it very impractical because now you're taking lots of extra batteries, you're buying lots of extra batteries, and you have to warranty them all. Lastly, the whole recycle time thing. Okay, so it boasts this crazy fast recycle time of 1.5 seconds. What they don't tell you is that if you flash at full power around 12 to 15 times, it'll overheat. Once it overheats, it slows down the recycle time tremendously. You get back down to a normal recycle time of these guys. And oftentimes it can just basically stop. You have to turn it off, you have to take the battery out, you have to put it back in to get it to go again. So they heat up very, very quickly, especially if you're firing at full power and you're firing repeatedly every few seconds. All right? So don't kind of let all those things, all these features are fantastic on paper, but it just doesn't quite deliver them in a professional manner that I would expect if I'm going to use this on professional shoots. All right, that, and we already mentioned the wireless system is a bit clunky and a bit cheap, and overall this is a bit lower build quality. But with all that said, it's still number 3 on my list. Why is it still number 3? Of all the flashes out there, why do I still have this number 3? Well, because even with all of its downsides, for $100, it makes for a pretty fantastic manual flash. It gives you some sort of radio triggering system that you can use, that you can play with, that you can practice with. It gives you a very inexpensive flash, and you can get batteries for it, and the batteries are only like 20, 30 bucks as well. It's a very inexpensive system with a lot of features available to you to get started with. So as a starter flash, if you're using this on your shoots, that's great. But here's the thing. If you're using it for professional shoots, that's fine. The quality of the light is fine. There's really not any issues with that. The guide number and the power output and everything, that's totally fine. But if you're using it on a professional shoot, here's what I had to do. I had to have always about 5, I would usually take 4 to 5 flashes on a shoot where I would only need 2 to 3. And I would take 10 to 12 batteries, and I would have extra, transceivers, and I would have extra everything. Because as I was testing this on my shoots, I just didn't have the confidence that, everything would work out just fine if I only had one spare. I needed to have constantly additional batteries and additional wireless systems because everything is a little bit more flimsy. So it's fantastic to start out on, it's fantastic to learn with and to get used to shooting and everything. When you take it on professional shoots, you're going to find that you're taking a lot of extra gear just to make sure that when one of them does fail or when a battery goes out or whatever goes wrong, you have a spare. And that gets a little bit cumbersome and a little bit annoying. So for professionals, I really wouldn't recommend it. But starting out, not bad. All right. Let's go on to this guy. This is number 4. This is the Yongnuo YN560 III, another Chinese-made flash. Same thing with the Neewer. These are Chinese-made flashes. And again, quality, you can kind of tell, is just not that great on these. They're very light. They're very plasticky. Not really awesome as far as quality. But this guy is even cheaper than the Neewer. It's 75 bucks. Uses AA's. But guess what this has? This has a wireless system built into this flash. Now it's still a manual flash. I don't have any full function controls. I don't have, autofocus assist. I don't have, all these types of different controls that a full feature flash would have. But I do have a built-in wireless radio system. That's kind of cool, especially for 75 bucks. The radio system, again, if you want to get the controller, it's very inexpensive. You can get a bunch of these heads, and it's great. It works well. But let's go over the pros and the cons. So, number 1, built-in wireless system. Number 2, wireless control of power. That's pretty awesome. This guy also had wireless control of power, but not wireless control of zoom on the Neewer. Okay, very inexpensive, 75 bucks. It has an external power output, and it also has a PC sync port for third-party radio systems. Okay, what else? Let's see, I'm gonna move this guy just so I can see. It also has a metal hot shoe on the bottom, so the hot shoe is a little bit more durable. That's a bit as far as the pros go. The cons, cheap build quality. Another thing, we had poor third-party wireless, basically consistency. When we're using Pocket Wizards with this to trigger, it was the most inconsistent of all the flashes in triggering. We ran the test multiple times once again. Once we got to around a 30, 40, 50 foot range, we would get very seldom triggers. It would be too inconsistent to use. Now with their own wireless system, it worked much better. Up to, say, a couple hundred feet, it was really no problem. But with third-party stuff, it was having issues. And we even turned off the internal wireless system. We turned it back on. We tried several different things. And this was the worst as far as that. So don't get this system thinking that you can eventually use it with a Pocket Wizard or something else in the future, because you might have issues with it. But if you're using it with just its own wireless system, the Yongnuo system, and you're doing it for practice, then again, it's a decent tool. The menu system is the other con that I really didn't like about this. It's very clunky. You can tell there's not a lot of thought put into the way that this menu is put together, and especially with wireless and all this different power and control functionality built in, it's just not well enough designed to make it simple to use. So it's going to be kind of annoying working through the menu system. But it's, again, 75 bucks, and that's really the whole thing. You're like, but it's 75 bucks. Yeah, it's 75 bucks. You can get 3 or 4 of these with the wireless system and have a full off-camera setup for under 400 bucks, easily, okay? And that means that if something breaks, it's really cheap and inexpensive to fix. Once again, fantastic for learning, fantastic for taking on shoots. If you're shooting professionally, I would have extras, and I wouldn't rely on it on range, okay? So if you need more than, say, 100 feet to work reliably, probably don't rely on this type of a flash unit. All right, last, the Vivitar 285 HV, which I've hidden away because, I'm sorry, you're just too ugly to look at, son. This is the redheaded stepchild of flashes. It is the, I don't know, Hunchback of Notre Dame of flashes. But here's the thing, it made my list as number 5 because it still works pretty well. They did a re-release of this. This is a flash that was designed 20, 25 years ago. It was designed a long time ago. And then they did a re-release because this was known as just a workhorse manual flash. I mean, you could beat the crap out of them. They were incredible build quality. They just stood up to everything. Now, the new release isn't as good of quality. They also didn't address certain things that we're going to talk about, but it still works well, and it's still 100 bucks. And so it's not really bad. And let me go over the pros here. It's incredibly simple. Of all the flashes, it's the most stupidly simple, but the problem is it's also very clunky. So I think we showed this earlier. This is the zoom functionality. Oh yeah, that's some quality right there. That kind of sucks. This is the control of power. You have a nice little dial, and it only goes, by the way, from full power to 1/16th power, whereas all the other flashes here, anything that has digital controls will let you go down to 1/64th, 1/128th power. This only goes down to 1/16th, which means that if you need less power than 1/16th, you have to use ND gels to cut the power down, okay, which is kind of annoying because that's something else that you got to get. All right, so that's kind of annoying, but it's simple to use. It has fantastic wireless range. Of all of these flashes, this, the LumiPro, the Nikon, they have flawless wireless range, and that's what makes it so awesome. Is paired with a Pocket Wizard, you have no issues with consistency. Okay, lastly, my pro number 3 is that it just works. It doesn't work. It's not like Michael Jordan where it gets the job done and it does it in a very beautiful fashion. This is more like the 7'1" guy that just kind of stands by the hoop and just kind of puts the basket in a really awkward way, but hey, he's so tall he gets it in. That's this guy. All right. Now, the cons. Your clunky old school interface. It's got a terrible 1/1 full power recycle time. Absolutely terrible. This is one of the things that they never adjusted with it. I mean, given that it's such a bad recycle time, you're never going to run into issues of overheating, even if it's 150 degrees outside. But it's a very slow recycle time when you're running full power. Okay, what else? It looks like a tank, and like all the other descriptions that we talked about. The modifiers don't easily fit this head. If you look at the comparison of these heads together, this head like fits inside of this freaking thing. This guy could like swallow, what is that, a TT-850? This is the same size as a 580EX, 600 RT, and this guy could swallow it. So that means that things like a mag mod really aren't going to fit over this. So you have to get kind of bigger modifiers. You have to get modifiers that actually fit over the head. It has a plastic hot shoe, which is kind of crappy. It requires a third-party radio system, but it does have really good compatibility with that radio system. It requires a special cable for your radio trigger. It uses this old school, I don't even know what this is. It's like this dagger pin system. What the heck is this? This is a cable that you got to buy separate. And it's so sharp that you can actually stab yourself with it. Okay, that fits onto this side, and it adapts it to a regular mini phone cable that you can plug into your Pocket Wizard. What the heck? I got to get another cable just for this little thing. And that was it. I think I actually mentioned plastic hot shoe twice. I really was dissatisfied with the plastic hot shoe, so I felt like it deserved being mentioned twice. But that's it. So it works in a pinch, but again, I put it at the very bottom list because I've used it for a long time and it still works. I feel like it needs to be mentioned, kind of like an honorable mention guy. But if I have my choice, I'm gonna stick with the LumaPro or an old Nikon. Those are the two I'd really recommend. If you want to start playing with wireless systems, you want to start playing with manual flashes that have more features, and you want to save a bit of money and get something that'll work for right now, both the newer and the Yongnuo are good options. They both have kind of features that are really nice to have in a manual flash, especially for the price. The Vivitar, hey, if you've got 24 of them lying around somewhere like I do, then why not? It works.